Welcome to podcast 85, dear listener. I'm Heather Gorringe from Wiggly Wigglers. I'm on the Wiggly sofa and I'm really pleased to say we've got a guest today. But I'm joined first by
Richard
and Farmer Phil.
And I'm delighted to have with us Kitty Corrigan. Thank you for coming, Kitty.
Pleasure.
Who is the Deputy Editor of Country Living magazine. One of my favourites, and I'm a subscriber, in fact.
And have been for a long time too.
I have, yeah, really love Country Living magazine. We're going to talk about Open Farm Sunday today, and we've got an interview with Farmer Jake from Overbury coming up. Farm Sunday was actually started by a Nuffield scholar, Ian Piggott, and he went to Denmark and found out all about how they open the farm one day a year with the idea of sharing what farmers do with normal folk and getting feedback from those normal folk back as to what farmers should do. So he brought that idea home and actually became NFU Farming Champion in 2006. Did you know that?
I didn't know. How long Farm Sunday been going for now then?
First year last year. Okay. And I think the response was quite phenomenal. 350 farms.
There were 300 farms open, and they reckoned that the average attendance was 100 people per farm. So that you've got 30,000 people having access to farms countrywide who may not otherwise have been able to do that.
Yeah.
So Ian Piggott was the inspiration, but actually went to Leaf Linking Environment and Farming to actually manage the whole process, and I think they were quite surprised about the success. What was your involvement, Kitty, with Country Living magazine?
Well, we first heard about Open Farm Sunday in the Farming Press last year, and when we decided to launch our campaign, which runs throughout the year, it's called Fair Trade for British Farmers, we thought we should work with Leaf as well, and some of the Country Living team will be going to some of the open farms, and as far as we're concerned, it's really important. Our readership is probably 50% in the town and 50% in the country, and most of the townspeople are really interested in what goes on farms in the countryside, but they are embarrassed sometimes to ask the questions. The great thing about Open Farm Sunday is you can get your kids along and they can ask the questions that you really wanted to know the answers to, and it's a way of educating people. And I suppose throughout the magazine we try to raise awareness but not be patronising, because of all our rural readers. You don't want to appear to be talking down, but on the other hand, you've got to tell the people in the towns just how things do work, so it's getting that balance. But I think it's a great idea, and perhaps now more than ever, it's just a way of raising awareness amongst the public and make them think about where their food comes from.
Have you seen change take place since you've been Deputy Editor in terms of what the readers actually feel about farming?
They're very passionate about farming and the way that farmers are responsible for managing the countryside. And in the features that we run, we try and always make the link between environment and welfare and good quality food, and the importance that you realise the whole chain, so that when you go into a supermarket where, let's face it, a lot of people still do their shopping, you can just have that bit more information when you're looking at the labelling, which sometimes can be a bit confusing, but to try and direct you towards buying local seasonal produce rather than something exotic flown in from thousands of miles.
Rich?
I was miles away then, you know. That's what I was thinking about, how romantic farming can be, but how important it is for people to get involved in their farms, and what a joy it's going to be, and what a great opportunity it is for people to come along and appreciate, you know, the mechanisms of the farm, and a local farm as well, because there's going to be that many farms that are opened up all over the country. You know, it's a unique chance for people to be able to join in and be part of something, and really it's it's part of the community. You know, farming is such an integral part of community.
I was thinking it's probably quite difficult for some of the farmers though, because traditionally farmers are quite reserved people, and it's actually to be confronted with maybe 50 people.
There are some exceptions.
Well, I just know because we ran a campaign a few years ago, The Farmer Wants a Wife, and that was
great.
It
Absolutely
Yes,
great it was.
Great.
And we brought a lot of people together, and some farmers who'd never had a girlfriend and never had been out of their own county, we managed to fix up with someone, and we've had 13 babies as a result.
That's better than Cilla Black, isn't it?
It's really much better. Yeah. But the serious side of that campaign was that farming can be a very isolated occupation, because more and more it's maybe just one farmer, usually male, and his tractor, and you don't have, and they can't afford to have hordes of workers that they would have had 50 years ago or longer ago maybe, and all the social events that used to be connected with farming have dwindled, and a lot of villages have lost their pub and their village hall, so there just aren't those opportunities for farmers to get out and socialise. It is quite an isolating job, and I think if you're going to be suddenly having all these people, it's like people traipsing through your own home. If they're going to be saying, well, why don't you do this? I think you have to be quite a special person to agree to take part in it in a way.
Definitely, but I think it's what's interesting about this area, for instance, the Blakemere and Preston on Wye, is that you have a real mix of farming people and types, like you've been mentioning. Some are quite introverted and very rural, but they have a very pleasant demeanour. But what people like Phil are able to do is draw those guys in and encourage them to be more open and really sort of point them in the right direction as to the value of introducing people to the way they practice their operations. So so it's quite nice to have people like Phil in those communities, and I think in every county there are those mixes really. So again, that's why it's so important for farmers to get together and communicate effectively with each other as well as to the wider community.
Your The Farmer Wants a Wife campaign highlighted something which I think is crucial, and that all farmers are different. They farm differently, their farms are different, and they're different characters. And the great thing about Open Farm Sunday is that it offers the public the opportunity to find that out for themselves, but it offers the farmer the opportunity to find out about himself or herself, so that by people asking them questions, they are required to justify what they do. Now, because it's isolated and you just plunder along in your own sort of sweet world, if nobody asks you to justify what you do, you might not think about it. If it isn't broke, don't try and fix it. But if somebody says, why do you do something, and your next thought is, I have not the slightest idea why I do it like that, it would be better if I did it differently. So it's a great positive the other way round. And if the public can see by coming back regularly to a farm that their questions actually shape how the farmer operates, that is the best feedback of all. Because if they can see movement, or the farmer can say, somebody asked me last year about I do this with the cattle, and I thought that's not the best way of doing it. What a great thing for British farming. And the media in the past, and I don't mean the magazine media, but the TV and newsprint media tend to try and label farmers, if you've got farmer stamped across your forehead, that's it, that's what you are, you produce wheat or whatever. They're all different, a vast diversity of farmers and farms.
Well, let's hear from some farmers now, because Rich has been out and about, and so have I. So we'll go and find out what is going on Farm Sunday.
Okay, so we're away. Well, Jake, it's nice to see you. And
thanks, Richard.
Thanks for coming out. I mean, it's no real hardship, though, is it, to come out for a walk on a day like today? And really, the countryside's looking pretty splendid. We've had some timely rain, I think.
Just in the nick of time, actually, here.
Yeah. What are you farming here, all told?
It's about 1,400 hectares in all, and that's split up between combinable crops, vegetable crops and grassland. Got 1,000 ewes just over that range all over the sort of permanent grass, really. It's old traditional parkland, doesn't receive a lot of fertiliser.
Right.
And they're pretty thrifty animals, but we can't really do much else with this kind of ground.
No. Did you say this is registered parkland that we're walking across now?
It is, yeah. It's grade 2 sort of listed parkland. For the old trees, that it's got some specimen trees in here. It's about 350 years old, some of these trees.
Right. They are stunning, aren't they? I mean, those are the oak I'm looking at now is the sort of quintessential English parkland oak, with the long sweeping dead boughs and the kind of peripheral long sweeping branches that drag it almost down to the grass.
It is. It's a very pretty sight to look at, and what could be quintessentially English, I guess.
Yeah. it is, absolutely.
We're very fortunate.
It's stunning. So you and I mean, really one of the main reasons I came over today was to chat to you about Open Farm Sunday. But I bumped into you a few years ago, didn't I? It was a BMW Works. Do you remember?
That's right. Yeah, up in just outside of Birmingham, wasn't it?
That's right.
So
and
two very country people right in the middle of.
Yeah. That's funny. And then of course I bumped into you again through you're working here now at Overbury Estate, and you're managing this farm. But you were doing the same. You were managing it then. So that was about 3 years ago, wasn't it?
Yeah, about 3 years ago. I've been here 4 years now, working for Penelope, and we're doing a lot. This will be our second Open Farm Sunday. We took part in the first one last year, and we should be having another go this year.
You're very passionate about farming, aren't you? And sort of getting the messages across of the significance of farming and how, the importance and the role it plays in the rural community. And I guess that's what Open Farm Sunday is all about, isn't it? Bringing people in, letting people see exactly what goes on.
Absolutely. I mean, there are so many people that I think it's probably the only industry where people can sort of walk past it or drive through it, and they have an insight into the intimate workings of what you're actually doing.
Right.
Going back to the BMW factory, you can't just sort of walk past, open the door and have a look in and see how they're building their cars or whatever.
Yeah.
But being out in the countryside, everybody can look, and everybody's got an opinion. And I think some of them opinions can be a little bit misguided. But in order to try and correct that and to, educate people a little bit more about how it works, you have to get people out on the farm. They need to come and see and to talk and find out how it runs, why we do certain things, and try and educate them and talk to them from there.
Yeah, sure. I mean, so even for me, since I've been working with Wiggly's, Blakemere, it's been an eye opener. I mean, whilst I don't necessarily agree with everything that Phil does, I've really been able to appreciate and have a much better understanding of farming generally, because I've been involved in the whole process in many respects, and certainly so far as showing people around are concerned, I have a much better insight into the workings, the mechanisms of farming. So it's really interesting, isn't it, for people? I mean, this is the whole thing about farming is it is, it's intellectually stimulating. I mean, obviously physically stimulating as well. But there's so much going on.
There is. Every day is different as well. That's what I enjoy about the challenge of farming. You wake up in the morning. People are obsessed with the weather, British people, English people, and especially farmers, because it is so important to what we do. You get dry periods of time, you can't do things. You get too much rain, you can't do things. And we're avid weather buffs, which is kind of...
I think as British people we tend to be, and farmers even worse.
Farmers even worse. So it is. There's just so much going on, whether it's growing crops or walking fields or counting birds. We do quite a lot of arable bird surveys here, where we've put habitat down for, say, lapwings, and then 3 or 4 times through the spring months we'll go out and we'll count the birds. So it's not just farming, and we do that just to be able to gauge what we've done, whether we've done the right thing for those sorts of species. But it's all a balance. What you do right for one species might not be so good for something else.
Yeah.
And it's that real fine balance of trying to manage it.
That is a real trick. There's a real art in that. When I visited your blog the other day, and I thought it was great. And there's a fantastic photograph on there of a lapwing's nest. And in fact, that's a rare sight in the countryside these days, isn't it? I mean, ground nesting birds generally are decreasing dramatically for several reasons. So it's great for you guys to be in a position to be able to encourage those species through farming practice that works, that's still productive, but that equally is able to support, a very biodiverse community.
That's it. That's how we try and do it. It is all a balance, and we are here to make a profit. We have to make some money to reinvest and to keep people employed, which is as important. But if you can do that with an environmental conscience, then there's no reason why the two things can't go hand in hand for the majority of the time. There are some times when, unfortunately, they can't for one reason or another. But there are a lot of choices that you can make along the way. Using a certain type of chemical that won't harm the beneficial insects, as opposed to using a broadcasting kind of insecticide, as it were, that would take everything out.
Right,
yes, it might cost a bit more money, but you're targeting your pests, if you like, that bit more closely, which has got an environmental impact. Later on, you keep your beneficials there, then they're there to feed on the next kind of wave of aphids or whatever it is that you're happening to having to control.
Absolutely, and I think it's that attention to detail that's so important. And in some instances, we've kind of gotten away from. I think we're going back to it. People are more aware of the significance of many species now, but it is that attention to detail that makes such a difference. Isn't it stimulating as well? Don't you find it exciting to be able to kind of get into the nitty gritty of that a bit?
Yeah, it is. It just takes up a lot of time. You've got to got a lot of research, a lot of background workings, and then also what I find nice, like taking the picture of the lapwing nest. I also went out and took some photographs after we'd done a treatment, and all the beneficials were still there. They were still spinning spiders' webs up the tram lines and catching all these orange blossom midges. This was June a couple of years ago, and that's it's actually going out there and seeing the result of what you've done, and it's positive, and you think, well, good
absolutely.
job.
Yeah, you feel a real sense of achievement.
Yeah, it is.
Yeah, satisfied that you've got the balance right.
There is, but there's a lot. It's not just leaf farmers that do that. I think a lot of farmers, in general, actually follow a lot of these principles, but they don't necessarily tell people about it.
Right.
And I think that's where being involved with leaf has really kind of encouraged me and Penelope to have more confidence in actually telling people what we do, because it is important. As I say, everybody likes to think that they're involved in the countryside when they're driving past to their holidays or commuting to and fro and looking out the train window. They see the picture rolling past every day.
Right.
And actually to get people involved and to kind of tell them what we do is real privilege, actually, and people are so keen to learn.
Yeah, sure.
The Leaf Sunday days coming round on the tractor and trailer rides, it's about a hour and 3/4 to 2 hours, the trip. And they're just, so engrossed in it and asking so many questions. Why do you do this? Why do you do that? What's that? How does this work? It's fascinating.
Sure. And for you to be able to answer those questions is great as well, isn't it?
It is, yes. Yeah, I don't think I've been stumped yet.
So enthusiastic. No, it's the first time.
There will be.
I've been stumped lots of times. I'll just change the subject. Just answer a different question.
A politician in training.
Absolutely, yeah, for sure. I think we've all got a bit of politician in us, for sure. But what sort of stuff are you going to do on Farm Sunday? What time does the farm open?
We're opening at 9 o'clock in the morning, and being sort of quite regimental this year in that we're taking bookings to take people on tractor and trailer rides around the hill, around Breeden Hill, and those tractor and trailer rides will stop off at various points along the route. So we'll go to the nursery school first, which the estate built 2 years ago.
Right.
Talk there about the social policy and getting children and families involved in the village. So it's not just farming, it's the whole sort of community aspect as well, which is, we're important and proud of what we've got here. Then we're going to go to the stud, the Overbury stud, where there are 4 stallions standing there. So we'll have a little bit of look at some mares and foals there grazing. Hopefully it won't be raining. That's a fantastic sight.
I bet.
Really nice.
Yeah,
and from there we shall kind of wander our way around the eastern side of Breeden Hill, and we'll have a couple of stops along the way to talk about crops and irrigation. There'll be a sprayer parked up in one of the fields, so we can talk about the need for those sorts of machines.
Okay.
And then back to the village hall, really, via a similar sort of parkland view to the one we're looking at now. We'll talk a little bit about the sheep then as well.
And are people going to meet you at the village hall? Is that the idea? Do they need to come to the village hall to come to Overbury Estates?
That's it. Need to go to the village hall. We'll have signposts up on the day.
Right. It's very easy to get to, isn't it? Here you can. Literally, it's junction 9 off the M5.
Absolutely, and we're only 5-6 minutes from there. Very easy to follow.
And it is a really interesting part of the world. I mean, for me, I've just come over from Tewkesbury, and it's just like you said, on the outskirts of the Cotswolds. Really,
yes.
It's a relatively affluent area, but it's gentle and subtle. And there is when I'm looking now, you and I are chatting just outside of 5 Bar Gate, and I can look into this woodland. We can hear the warblers and stuff in the background, and there's a whole load of comfrey growing and forget-me-nots and docks and things like that, and some red campion in the background. It's absolutely stunning. So I think for folks to be able to come out into this sort of environment and to be able to get the answers to their questions makes a real treat. It's going to be a real fun day, isn't it?
Yeah, it is a fun day. We get a lot out of it.
People who live locally to this area, even if they don't live locally to the area, and fancy a superb day out, then definitely come and see Farmer Jake if you can't come and see Farmer Phil. For sure.
Or check out the blog site, because there's all sorts of farming updates on there.
What's the blog?
What we're doing.
What's the address of the blog?
www.farmerjakef.blogspot.com.
Excellent.
Well, that's where it is.
Cheers, Jake. Should we go and have a look a bit further afield?
Yes. Let's go and see what the other guys are up to.
Excellent.
Hi, this is Jeremy Padfield from Church Farm, Stratton-on-the-Foss, near Bath in Somerset. Why did we take part in Farm Sunday last year? Well, as farmers, we're fully aware of the gulf of understanding that has developed between the general public and where, why, and how their food comes from. So we saw Farm Sunday as a brilliant way where we could reconnect on a local basis. It gave us the opportunity to meet up with people from local villages and towns by sharing a day in the countryside. We feel that we have a lot to celebrate in farming, and it just seemed common sense to join together just for one day in the year to share how important agriculture is to all. The best part for us was that we involved several of our farming neighbours who brought their own unique skills and knowledge to the day. We're an arable and beef farm, so actually on the day we had chickens, dairy cows, calves, pigs and sheep, which was great for all. We served cream teas and barbecue, and all the food was sourced from an 8-mile radius. The trailer tours were a must and a real hit. The whole day was a great success. Although we were all a little bit tired, we all felt it was a great sense of achievement, and we were fulfilled by the many positive comments that came from those that came on the day. We actually ended up with about 500 people on the day, which was great. Our aim this year is for more than 500, and we aim to do that by once again targeting the local press and visiting more local schools. Hopefully many of last year's visitors will come along again with their friends and family. So go for it and do it big. Thank you.
So Leaf is organising Farm Sunday, so if you want to find out where a farm near you is, go to www.farmsunday.org, which is part of the Leaf website linking environment and farming. And there's all sorts of things going on. Rich, you can go and see Tim Downs in Shrewsbury milk his cows at 2 o'clock if you want to. You can go and meet up with some Oxford Sandy and Black pigs at Wolverhampton. You can see a farm that is an eco school at Staffordshire. And you met up with Anne Stanier and Norman Stanier, who are Dragon Orchards, yesterday.
I did, yesterday.
What are they up to?
Their farm is open many times during the year because they have a great scheme that they call crop sharers. So that for a fee, you become sort of like a member of their club, and they have weekends and village events. They've incorporated the village. They go to the village hall, to the harvest festival, to some of the church services if they want to. And this last year, they even took some of them to Normandy to see the farmers' markets over in France. And they just have this fabulous thing. And so they'll have a weekend where they come to Norman and Anne's farm, which is at Putley, just up the road near Ledbury, and they do whatever happens at that time of the season. So in the autumn it'll be picking fruit or tasting jam or drinking cider or apple juice and so on, and it just seemed fabulous to me. So they'll be open and doing all their normal things. I think Anne and Norman's business was greatly helped by Country Living.
Yes, they won one of our awards. Anne Stanier entered our Enterprise in Rural Women Awards, so we featured them, and actually we as a magazine bought a share and went up at harvest time, and then we received our lovely crate of juices and fruit, and we all made apple pies, etc., etc.
Fantastic.
You have a great memory, Kitty. I've noticed that you are able to remember all these characters and individual circumstances in all the articles that you've written in the magazines.
Well, I have been on the magazine for quite a long time, and I am called the Oracle when somebody says, when did we do such and such? And I say, that was probably February 97. Yeah. and sometimes I get the page number as well, but the longer I've been there, the harder it is, because my archive obviously is bigger and bigger.
Yeah, sure.
I don't know how long that'll last.
Now, we're making Farm Sunday sound really, really nice. Oh, it's so cosy and so lovely, and you're going to engage with this old chap, aren't you? And he's got his lovely tweed suit on, and it's going to be wonderful. Well, not always, is it? No. What if there's things that you don't agree with, things that you really question, you've always wanted to know? Why don't farmers like badgers? Things that really niggle you. Perhaps they do, perhaps they don't. Why don't you go and find out? What about if you're actually concerned about polytunnel produce? Why don't you go and find out? You can find a farm on the website that actually shows you around an organic fruit farm with polytunnels. But there's all sorts of things that are controversial, aren't they? If you want to go and ask a farmer about BSE, this is your chance. Absolutely. And I don't mean that
This is a great opportunity for an argument, isn't it?
No, Rich. What I mean is...
I fully intend to argue with Phil on the 10th of June.
We'll come on to what you're doing on Farm Sunday in a minute. I've got the measure of you, I think.
Dear listener, I do not mean you go and start an argument with a farmer, but I do think that often there's puzzles that people have that just need to be sorted. So if you've got a question, Open Farm Sunday is guaranteed that those farmers involved will be willing to answer it. Now, you might not agree with it.
The important thing is that because the farmer has signed up for Open Farm Sunday, we welcome the questions. It is everybody's opportunity. There is no offence going to be caused, whatever you want to ask.
Open for attack.
And I think it's probably important that anybody who's going to see Ian Piggott's farm at Trails End at Harpenden in Hertfordshire should ask him why he's got a green shirt on and not a pink one, but that's by the by.
Ian Piggott's always in pink, but he's going to be in green this coming Sunday. So can we have, please, what is going to happen on Lower Blakemere?
Well, we've got several things going on. We're going to do hay rides. Because when we went to Tennessee, they like hay rides in Tennessee. So we thought we'd do some of those, and it'd be an opportunity for everybody to have a ride on a tractor and trailer, obviously. We can see the cattle, we can see some badgers, we can talk about badgers, which is a good subject in itself. Why we do our cattle the way we do. We've got beef cattle here, one or two bits and pieces about the crops that we grow here and why we grow them and how we grow them. So that'll be one aspect of it. We've got our land steward, David Curtis. We're a Duchy of Cornwall farm, and David is the man in charge of keeping us in order and notably collecting the rent. And so we've got David doing a bit on why Farmer Phil pays the rent and what David does with it. So that's another little bit. But then the best bit for me is I'm going to dig a big hole in my field of barley and I'm going to put Rich in it.
Richard, why are you in a big hole in Farmer Phil's barley?
I'm not sure, but as long as I can get out of the thing after I've got in there. I think I'm going to be talking about soil. I still think I'm going to be talking about soil, but perhaps also talk about the crop that I'm in as well. Maybe put it into context. Maybe talk about the significance of barley, so all those kind of multifaceted features of a fairly unassuming plant.
And also, we probably don't do it enough, but to dig a soil pit so that you can look at the profile of the soil.
That'd be really interesting.
See the different layers in the soil. And in the field where you're going to be, I have dug a 20-foot hole in it in the past.
Yep.
And eons ago, the river used to flow there. Yep. And you can see all the floods and silt layers 20 foot down from all those years ago and glaciers and so on. So we won't go 20 foot down, but you will be able to see topsoil, subsoil, roots and so on.
God, I better dig out some notes from university. One of my geology modules.
I think it probably ought to be a bit more light-hearted because I didn't go to university much. It was very boring.
Did, you went, but you just didn't bother finish it, do you?
Let's move on, Phil. If you want to feed some free-range hens, go to Lower Clopton Farm in Warwickshire. If you want a barbecue, you should go there too. If you fancy a garden musical evening, well, try Lower House Farm at Tenbury Wells. And otherwise, what about checking out the blackcurrant fields at Pencoed Court Farm? Anyway, whatever you want to do, go to the Leaf website, which is www.leafuk.org, and have a wonderful Farm Sunday on the 10th of June. Enjoy. Signing off from Wiggly Wigglers. Thank you, Kitty, so much for coming in.
Pleasure.
Farmer Phil.
Bye from me. See you on the 10th.
See you in a hole on the 10th.
I might fill it in before then.
Yeah.
Bye.